Hi, class. Okay, so we're at the beginning of chapter 21. Harry had decided to live with Sirius since he was his godfather. Pettigrew got away when the Dementors came, and it was just a whole big mess, and Harry passed out. He saw some interesting things and then passed out. So that's where we are right now. Chapter 21, Hermione's Secret, page 386. Shocking business. Shocking. Miracle none of them died. Never heard the like. By thunder, it was lucky you were there, Snape. Thank you, Minister. Order of Merlin, second class, I'd say. First class, if I can wangle it. Thank you very much indeed, Minister. Nasty catch you've got there. Black's work, I suppose? As a matter of fact, it was Potter, Weasley, and Granger, Minister. No. Black had bewitched them. I saw it immediately. A confundus charm, to judge by their behavior. They seemed to think there was a possibility he was innocent. They weren't responsible for their actions. On the other hand, their interference might have permitted Black to escape. They obviously thought they were going to catch Black single-handed. They've got away with a great deal before now. I'm afraid it's given them a rather high opinion of themselves. And of course Potter has always been allowed an extraordinary amount of license by the headmaster. Ah, well, Snape, Harry Potter, you know, we've all got a bit of a blind spot where he's concerned. And yet, is it good for him to be given so much special treatment? Personally, I try and treat him like any other student, and any other student would be suspended, at the very least, for leading his friends into such danger. Consider, Minister, against all school rules, after all the precautions put in place for his protection, out of bounds, at night, consorting with a werewolf and a murderer, and I have reason to believe he has been visiting Hogsmeade illegally, too. Well, well, we shall see, Snape, we shall see. The boy has undoubtedly been foolish. Harry lay listening with his eyes tight shut. He felt very groggy. The words he was hearing seemed to be traveling very slowly from his ears to his brain, so that it was difficult to understand. His limbs felt like lead, his eyelids too heavy to lift. He wanted to lie there on his comfortable bed forever. What amazes me most is the behavior of the Dementors. You've really no idea what made them retreat, Snape? No, Minister. By the time I had come round, they were heading back to their positions at the entrances. Extraordinary. And yet Black and Harry and the girl, all unconscious by the time I reached them. I bound and gagged Black naturally, conjured stretchers, and brought them all straight back to the castle. There was a pause. Harry's brain seemed to be moving a little faster, and as it did, a gnawing sensation grew in the pit of his stomach. He opened his eyes. Everything was slightly blurred. Somebody had removed his glasses. He was lying in the dark hospital wing. At the very end of the ward he could make out Madame Pomfrey, with her back to him, bending over a bed. Harry squinted. Ron's red hair was visible beneath Madame Pomfrey's arm. Harry moved his head over on the pillow. In the bed, to his right, lay Hermione. Moonlight was falling across her bed. Her eyes were open too. She looked petrified, and when she saw that Harry was awake, pressed a finger to her lips, then pointed to the hospital wing door. It was ajar, and the voices of Cornelius Fudge and Snape were coming through it from the corridor outside. Madame Pomfrey now came walking briskly up the dark ward to Harry's bed. He turned to look at her. She was carrying the largest block of chocolate he had ever seen in his life. It looked like a small boulder. "Ah, you're awake!" she said briskly. She placed the chocolate on Harry's bedside table and began breaking it apart with a small hammer. "How's Ron?" said Harry and Hermione together. "He'll live," said Madame Pomfrey grimly. "As for you two, you'll be staying here until I'm satisfied you're— Potter, what do you think you're doing?" Harry was sitting up, putting his glasses back on and picking up his wand. "I need to see the headmaster," he said. "Potter," said Madame Pomfrey soothingly, "it's all right. They've got Black. He's locked away upstairs. The Dementors will be performing the kiss at any moment now." "What?" Harry jumped out of bed. Hermione had done the same, but his shout had been heard in the corridor outside. Next second, Cornelius Fudge and Snape had entered the ward. "Harry, Harry, what's this?" said Fudge, looking agitated. "You should be in bed. Has he had any chocolate?" he asked Madame Pomfrey anxiously. "Minister, listen!" Harry said. "Sirius Black's innocent. Peter Pettigrew faked his own death. We saw him tonight. You can't let the Dementors do that thing to Sirius. He's—" But Fudge was shaking his head with a small smile on his face. "Harry, Harry, you're very confused. You've been through a dreadful ordeal. Lie back down now. We've got everything under control." "You haven't!" Harry yelled. "You've got the wrong man." "Minister, listen, please," Hermione said. She had hurried to Harry's side and was gazing imploringly into Fudge's face. "I saw him too. It was Ron's rat. He's an animagus. Pettigrew, I mean, and you see, Minister, said Snape, confounded both of them. Black's done a very good job on them. We are not confounded, Harry roared. Minister! Professor! Said Madame Pomfrey angrily. I must insist that you leave. Potter is my patient, and he should not be distressed. I'm not distressed. I'm trying to tell them what happened, Harry said furiously. If they'd just listen. But Madame Pomfrey suddenly stuffed a large chunk of chocolate into Harry's mouth. He choked, and she seized the opportunity to force him back onto the bed. Now, please, Minister, these children need care. Please leave. The door opened again. It was Dumbledore. Harry swallowed his mouthful of chocolate with great difficulty and got up again. Professor Dumbledore! Sirius Black! For heaven's sake, said Madame Pomfrey hysterically. Is this a hospital wing or not? Headmaster, I must insist. My apologies, Poppy, but I need a word with Mr. Potter and Miss Granger, said Dumbledore calmly. I have just been talking to Sirius Black. I suppose he's told you the same fairy tale he's planted in Potter's mind, spat Snape. Something about a rat and Pettigrew being alive. That indeed is Black's story, said Dumbledore, surveying Snape closely through his half-moon spectacles. And does my evidence count for nothing? Snarled Snape. Peter Pettigrew was not in the Shrieking Shack, nor did I see any sign of him on the grounds. That was because you were knocked out, Professor, said Hermione earnestly. You didn't arrive in time to hear— Miss Granger, hold your tongue. Now, Snape, said Fudge, startled, the young lady is disturbed in her mind. We must make allowances. I would like to speak to Harry and Hermione alone, said Dumbledore abruptly. Cornelius, Severus, Poppy, please leave us. Headmaster, sputtered Madame Pomfrey, they need treatment. They need rest. This cannot wait, said Dumbledore. I must insist. Madame Pomfrey pursed her lips and strode away into her office at the end of the ward, slamming the door behind her. Fudge consulted the large gold pocket watch dangling from his waistcoat. The Dementors should have arrived by now, he said. I'll go and meet them. Dumbledore, I'll see you upstairs. He crossed to the door and held it open for Snape. Snape hadn't moved. You surely don't believe a word of Black's story, Snape whispered, his eyes fixed on Dumbledore's face. I wish to speak to Harry and Hermione alone, Dumbledore repeated. Snape took a step toward Dumbledore. Sirius Black showed he was capable of murder at the age of 16, he breathed. You haven't forgotten that, Headmaster? You haven't forgotten that he once tried to kill me? My memory is as good as it ever was, Severus, said Dumbledore quietly. Snape turned on his heel and marched through the door Fudge was still holding. It closed behind them, and Dumbledore turned to Harry and Hermione. They both burst into a speech at the same time. Professor, Black's telling the truth. He saw Pettigrew. He escaped when Professor Lupin turned into a werewolf. He's a rat. Pettigrew's finger, he cut it off. Pettigrew attacked Ron. It wasn't serious. But Dumbledore held up his hand to stem the flood of explanations. It is your turn to listen, and I beg you will not interrupt me, because there is very little time, he said quietly. There is not a shred of proof to support Black's story, except your word. And the word of 2 13-year-old wizards will not convince anybody. A street full of eyewitnesses swore they saw Sirius murder Pettigrew. I myself gave evidence to the ministry that Sirius had been the Potter's secret keeper. Professor Lupin can tell you, Harry said, unable to stop himself. Professor Lupin is currently deep in the forest, unable to tell anyone anything. By the time he is human again, it will be too late. Sirius will be worse than dead. I might add that werewolves are so mistrusted by most of our kind that his support will count for very little, and the fact that he and Sirius are old friends. But listen to me, Harry. It is too late. You understand me? You must see that Professor Snape's version of events is far more convincing than yours. He hates Sirius, Hermione said desperately, all because of some stupid trick Sirius played on him. Sirius has not acted like an innocent man. The attack on the fat lady, entering Gryffindor Tower with a knife, without Pettigrew alive or dead, we have no chance of overturning Sirius's sentence. But you believe us! Yes, I do, said Dumbledore quietly, but I have no power to make other men see the truth, or to overrule the Minister of Magic. Harry stared up into the grave face, and felt as though the ground beneath him were falling sharply away. He had grown used to the idea that Dumbledore could solve anything. He had expected Dumbledore to pull some amazing solution out of the air, but no, their last hope was gone. What we need, said Dumbledore slowly, and his light blue eyes moved from Harry to Hermione, is more time. But Hermione began, and then her eyes became very round. "Oh! Now pay attention," said Dumbledore, speaking very low and very clearly. "Sirius is locked in Professor Flitwick's office on the 7th floor, 13th window from the right of the west tower. If all goes well, you will be able to save more than one innocent life tonight. But remember this, both of you, you must not be seen. Miss Granger, you know the law. You know what is at stake. You must not be seen." Harry didn't have a clue what was going on. Dumbledore had turned on his heel and looked back as he reached the door. "I am going to lock you in. It is," he consulted his watch, 5 minutes to midnight. "Miss Granger, 3 turns should do it. Good luck." "Good luck?" Harry repeated as the door closed behind Dumbledore. 3 turns? What's he talking about? What are we supposed to do? But Hermione was fumbling with the neck of her robes, pulling from beneath them a very long, very fine gold chain. "Harry, come here," she said urgently. "Quick!" Harry moved toward her, completely bewildered. She was holding the chain out. He saw a tiny, sparkly hourglass hanging from it. "Here!" She had thrown the chain around his neck, too. "Ready?" she said breathlessly. "What are we doing?" Harry said, completely lost. Hermione turned the hourglass over 3 times. The dark ward dissolved. Harry had the sensation that he was flying very fast backward. A blur of colors and shapes rushed past him. His ears were pounding. He tried to yell, but couldn't hear his own voice. And then he felt solid ground beneath his feet, and everything came into focus again. He was standing next to Hermione in the deserted entrance hall, and a stream of golden sunlight was falling across the paved floor from the open front doors. He looked wildly around at Hermione, the chain of the hourglass cutting into his neck. "Hermione, what—" "In here!" Hermione seized Harry's arm and dragged him across the hall to the door of a broom closet. She opened it, pushed him inside among the buckets and mops, then slammed the door behind them. Hermione, what happened?" "We've gone back in time," Hermione whispered, lifting the chain off Harry's neck in the darkness. 3 hours back." Harry found his own leg and gave it a very hard pinch. It hurt a lot, which seemed to rule out the possibility that he was having a very bizarre dream. "But, shh, listen, someone's coming. I think it might be us." Excuse me. Hermione had her ear pressed against the cupboard door. "Footsteps across the hall. Yes, I think it's us going down to Hagrid's." "Are you telling me," Harry whispered, "that we're here in this cupboard and we're out there too?" "Yes," said Hermione, her ear still glued to the cupboard door. "I'm sure it's us. It doesn't sound like more than 3 people, and we're walking slowly because we're under the invisibility cloak." She broke off, still listening intently. "We've gone down the front steps." Hermione sat down on an upturned bucket, looking desperately anxious, but Harry wanted a few questions answered. "Where did you get that hourglass thing?" "It's called a time turner," Hermione whispered, "and I got it from Professor McGonagall on our first day back. I've been using it all year to get to all my lessons. Professor McGonagall made me swear I wouldn't tell anyone. She had to write all sorts of letters to the Ministry of Magic so I could have one. She had to tell them that I was a model student and that I'd never, ever use it for anything except my studies. I've been turning it back so I can do hours over again. That's how I've been doing several lessons at once, see? But, Harry, I don't understand what Dumbledore wants us to do. Why did he tell us to go back 3 hours? How's that going to help Sirius?" Harry stared at her shadowy face. "There must be something that happened around now he wants us to change," he said slowly. "What happened? We were walking down to Hagrid's 3 hours ago." "This is 3 hours ago, and we are walking down to Hagrid's," said Hermione. "We just heard ourselves leaving." Harry frowned. He felt as though he were screwing up his whole brain in concentration. "Dumbledore just said we could save more than one innocent life," and then it hit him. "Hermione, we're going to save Buckbeak." "But how will that help Sirius?" "Dumbledore said he just told us where the window is. The window of Flitwick's office, where they've got Sirius locked up. We've got to fly Buckbeak up to the window and rescue Sirius. Sirius can escape on Buckbeak. They can escape together." From what Harry could see of Hermione's face, she looked terrified. "If we manage that without being seen, it'll be a miracle." "Well, we've got to try, haven't we?" said Harry. He stood up and pressed his ear against the door. "Doesn't sound like anyone's there. Come on, let's go." Harry pushed open the closet door. The entrance hall was deserted. As quietly and quickly as they could, they darted out of the closet and down the stone steps. The shadows were already lengthening, the tops of the trees in the Forbidden Forest gilded once more with gold. "If anyone's looking out of the window," Hermione squeaked, looking up at the castle behind them. "We'll run for it," said Harry determinedly. "Straight into the forest, all right? We'll have to hide behind a tree or something and keep a lookout." Okay, time's up.